Yes, people, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to KGX to the ZTV. Before we get into this video, do your boy a favor. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, turn those notifications on. Help a brother out. It means a lot to me. I appreciate everybody checking in. I appreciate the comments on all the posts. I try to respond to all of them. I appreciate the love when I jump on to other streams, whether they be match day streams or just chatting shit. But big up everybody. Community as always, especially the Chelsea community, whether here in the States or abroad. Um, from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate everybody. But let's get into it, man. All things Premier League, what we've learned, what we anticipate will happen over the next couple of months. This is I believe, the last international break um, until March. So yeah, there have been three, right? There was one in September, there was one in October, and of course this one in November. And then once this one is in the books, right? We've got some World Cup qualifying, we've got some friendlies and things like that. There will Things will start to get hot and heavy, especially for Chelsea. We get thrown right back into the fire. We've got away to Burnley, which isn't necessarily the most um, demanding of games, isn't necessarily the most high profile of matches. But after that, it's Barcelona midweek and then Emirates, both of them at home. Not Emirates, Arsenal, both of them at home. So yeah, things are going to pick up. Um, but yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it, and let's start with the table. And yes, I know this is a little small, but we'll go ahead and we'll zoom in on it a little bit for those folks out there that can't really see too much, including myself. Need to holler at my eye doctor. Um, get him to check on these old eyes. But yeah, as you can see, the table is madness. I was gonna say the table's starting to take shape, but it absolutely is not. If that's a shape, it would be. I have no idea what's. I don't even know what kind of shape what kind of shape this would be. But as you can see, from second place, or actually from third place Chelsea, to pretty much 11th place Brighton, or you could say 12th place Brentford, is separated by 4 points. And even if you want to take that down to Everton sitting there in 13th, that's 5 points. So that's pretty much a 2-game swing. So, for example, Chelsea could win the next or lose the next match, and Crystal Palace in 10th place right now could win their next match. And yes, they won't have the goal difference, but they'll be level on points. And you could, any particular weekend, you can go from third all the way down to 10th. And that really has a negative impact on the respective fan bases, right? Folks will say, yeah, we're sitting third and things like that. And look, it's better to be sitting third than 10th, absolutely. But it's still super, super early days. And that pack of clubs that are chasing European spots, that are chasing down the league leaders in Arsenal or second Man City, um, there's a lot of room for manipulation and a lot of room for fluctuation, and things can swing your perception of a season or a campaign up as to, up until this particular point, can change on a whim. And that's probably good for content creators and good for football Twitter, because it creates narratives, it creates outrage and things like that. But the reality of things is, settle the ball, settle it down. We've got to just let some of these matches, and it's been stop and start because of the aforementioned um, international breaks, where I feel like we haven't really gotten into a good rhythm in this season, because you play 3-4 games, you go on break, you come back, hope your players don't get injured over the break, knock on wood, and then you get back into it. There's some cup matches in between, whether that be the League Cup or for those folks in Europe. So there's been a lot of, especially with the summer too, with the Club World Cup, there's been a lot of things that have had an impact on where we sit right now with the table. But look, like I said, it's crazy. Newcastle are in 14th, Sunderland are in fourth, Spurs, who looking at their season in terms of their performances have been very shaky, but they're in fifth, finished 17th last year. Man United was 15th last year. They're in seventh, um, and things like that. So it's a crazy season, but let's start with the top. And look, if there's one consistent team, and if you're going to win the Premier League, it's all about consistency. Can you maintain a level of consistency? Can you beat the clubs? As Sir Alex Ferguson used to say, beat the clubs that you're supposed to beat and take points off of and don't lose matches versus those clubs that are in and around that title race or are title contenders, so to say. And look, there's probably three, maybe four legit title contenders, but of those, you would say in Arsenal have been the most consistent, mostly because defensively they are so solid and sound, right? We know that they've had a ton of injuries, right? Gyökeres is out right now. Saka or Odegaard is out right now, or has been out for the majority of the season. Saka was out for a decent amount of time. His backup was out in Madueke. They missed some time with Martinelli, who I think is currently injured and things like that. But look, one thing that Arsenal, the foundation that they have to lean on in times like this where their attack might not be firing. And yes, you could credit or discredit Arteta when it comes to that and some of his approaches to it and their over reliance on set pieces and things like that. But when you are difficult to beat and when you have a team that has a really strong chance of not conceding a goal, it lessens that pressure on your attack because you know what, we probably need just a goal here, maybe two to get us over the line. And I've seen that with Chelsea. I'm old enough to remember the 05-06 season where we got one goal and that was all that we necessarily needed. Then we could set up shop and see games out. And that's how we held that or still currently hold that 15 goals conceded Premier League defensive record, right? We've seen that way before that with 1-0 to the Arsenal and things like that. So long story short is what I'm saying is, look, while Arsenal still tries to figure out their attack, that defense is what they're going to lean on. And that defense has proven to be one of the sturdiest in Europe. And I've seen some people say, you know, Arsenal haven't won anything. They haven't gotten over the line. And yes, look, I completely agree. The jury's still out. Arsenal has to win the Premier League in my opinion, this year. They have to go deep into Europe. But I do believe that they are the favorites in the Premier League because of their squad depth, because of some of the transfer moves that they've made this summer, and because of some of the transfers that they've made in the past and helping to create depth, not only depth defensively, but also depth and with a few mixture of academy players, right? Wanyeri, Max Dowman, Lewis Skelly, to sort of add a little bit of not creativity, but a little bit of that youth and exuberance and a little bit of that that no fear mentality, right? We know that a lot of times when you've got a really good squad and you've got veterans, which they do, right? The likes of Gabriel, the likes of Saka, who's been in and around this league for 5-6 years now. Gyökeres is a veteran and things like that. Zubimendi is a veteran of international football. Odegaard, Declan Rice, right? Some of these guys might be a little bit, on the younger side in terms of 24, 25, 26, but they're very experienced players in terms of their careers internationally, as well as their experience playing over 100 games in this particular league. So you mix that in with some folks that they don't know any better, right? A Dowman, a Wanyeri, and I highlight those two because they're attacking players. So their impetus is to always attack, and go forward. And some of the passive aggressiveness hasn't been coached out of their game yet, which we know will come because Arteta is very risk adverse. And to be honest with you, that's what managers do. That's what Pep does. That's what what Tuchel did. That's what the top managers do is they sort of they coach up their players to know when to attack, when to not attack, and things like that. But for now, in the time being, when the likes of Dalman comes on, when the likes of Wanyeri comes on, they're on the front foot, right? They're receiving the ball, and their first instinct is to play it forward or to go forward with the ball. So, Arsenal, they scare me. They scare me. I do believe that they've got a very tough fixture list coming up out of the break. I talked about our next fixtures coming out of it, but they've got Spurs at home, they've got Bayern Munich at home, and then they come to Chelsea. So we'll get a real good feel for how serious Arsenal are in terms of this title race. Because if we talk about the next team, Man City are on their heels, and we've seen what happens to Arsenal when Man City gets on their heels, right? Big Steve from the Big Six always talks about the Blue Sharks coming, and I do believe that there is maybe not a fear factor, but there is concern from Arsenal fans and from maybe even Arsenal players too, and inside that Arsenal camp that we don't want Man City being the team to have to chase us down because they've proven it before. They've chased down the likes of Liverpool. They've chased down the likes of Arsenal a couple of years ago when Arsenal 22-23 when they were firing on all cylinders and things like that. They've got the experience. They've got the best manager in the world, maybe the best manager of all time. They've got a striker in Erling Haaland that he's inevitable. He is inevitable. I saw a video recently on with Rory Turkish. I forget what Tom's name is, and Statman Dave talking about who the best goal scorers in the Premier League are all time. And it basically came down to Thierry versus Erling Haaland. And I thought that the debate was pretty decent. But I don't like when you compare active players to players that have already hung up their boots from the standpoint of and I don't mind the comparisons of in this particular stage in their career, and this is where Thierry was at 24, 25, whatever Holland is, and this is where Holland is right now. But to say that Thierry is a better goal scorer than Erling Haaland, I thought was very, very disingenuous because when it's all said and done, the rate at which Erling Haaland puts the ball into the back of the net is going to be unrivaled by anybody. And that includes the likes of Messi, that includes the likes of Ronaldo and so forth. Um, no doubt in my mind, I don't even think it's debatable that Thierry Henry is a not I'll say much better, but he is a better footballer than Erling Haaland. But when it comes to putting the ball in the back of the net, Erling Haaland is one of the best I've ever seen, if not the best at this particular moment of his career. And he is absolutely carrying that attack. And I know Doku was fantastic versus Liverpool, and Doku overall his game has gone up a different level this year. Still needs to add more goals and assists to his game and more end product, which I think he has. And I think Pep Guardiola moving him a little bit more centrally has allowed him to take some of that poor decision making out of his game because he's just focused on just going, he's not focused on which way is he going to go. Is he going to go inside? Is he going to go down the touchline? Is he going to cut back inside? And then he's going to have to worry about his final ball. He's just forward, and then he can sort of just make things happen. And instead of going against fullbacks who are more accustomed to defending in 1v1 situations, he gets to go against center backs, which we saw with Kanate. Kanate doesn't want to, most center backs don't want to have to deal with a direct 1v1 tricky winger with power and pace like Doku. So, for me, and we know Erling Haaland's history with injuries and things like that. They've got a Mamouche who can definitely deputize, and Mamouche I thought last year was vital and critical because he hit the ground running and helping them to sort of get back on track after City had their disastrous. I want to say it was late November, December timeframe where they were just losing games for fun. And Holland was out injured. They didn't have Alvarez anymore. They went out. Actually, it had to be, yeah, maybe around January time too, because they went out. They spent the money on Mamouche. Mamouche hit the ground running. And this year, Mamouche has been plagued by injuries, so he's been a little bit of a bit part player, and he's kind of coming back into the fold. But an injury to Holland would really, really it, just like Salah last year carried that Liverpool attack, he's carrying that attack. And credit to Erling Haaland because his overall game has been much, much improved. His link up play in terms of holding the ball up, bringing others into it, his passing, his creativity. Their City's playing a little bit more direct, and I think some of that is due to the fact that they no longer have that ball playing goalkeeper like a Ederson or even like a Trafford at the beginning of the season, where they're playing that slow, methodical build up out of the back, right? We get the ball into our ball playing center backs, we get into a Nico Gonzalez or Reinders, and we worry about them progressing the ball. I've seen more times where they're just lumping it long, and because of Donnarumma is not the best with his feet, they're lumping it long into Holland. Holland's bringing it down. The folks are playing off of him, and they're getting forward at a much faster rate. I'm not a huge analytics guy, but I'd be curious to see, and if anyone knows, drop it into the comments, what the pace of play in terms of how much more direct City are this year when as compared to last year. But um, City's a team that they're starting to get healthy, right? They've got their center back partnership back in Gavardio and Diaz. They've got fullbacks who are playing at a much higher level than what we thought, right? No one in the right mind thought that Nico O'Reilly would be this good at left back. And this is not shade on Nico O'Reilly. Nico O'Reilly, I've seen him in the youth teams and in England's youth setup. He is a fantastic player. My only point to that was I never thought of Nico O'Reilly as a left back. Obviously, he grew up playing in the 10 and playing more centrally, but defensively, he's improved. He was very good against Salah, and he brings them just a little bit more calm on the ball. And to be honest with you, he's probably at this stage a better defender than Ait Nori, who they brought in to sort of be that left back that they've been missing for so long. So credit to Nico O'Reilly, credit to Matthias Nunes. A lot of us didn't rate that signing and still think that look, if there's one position that's a weakness for City in that defensive setup, it's probably him. But he's played very well, and he's starting to understand the fundamentals and what's being asked of a modern day right back. We know the physicality is there. We know he's got pace. We know he's got power, and we know he's strong. It's just a matter of him being able to adapt defensively and things like that. But City have done a good job of helping to cover for him as well. Nico Gonzalez has sort of stepped up over the last few games to sort of ease that Rodri comeback. Reinders has kind of dropped back a little bit more, but in terms of his role, but Foden has stepped up and is starting to look like the Foden that we knew from 2 years ago. Turkey's come back into the side and looks to be a very integral and sort of that wild card spark. I don't like to say the word maverick because maverick implies that he's just out there doing things on his own, ignoring the instructions from Pep and things like that. But he's got that unpredictability about him. Right foot, left foot. He's always looking to play on the front foot. I've seen him drop back deep and help to build out the back in terms of transition and play through pressure. We know the kind of quality he has. We know that he was dropped for a little bit because his fitness wasn't there and things like that. But sometimes it takes some adaptation. And we know Turkey's not blessed physically. Pause when it comes to pace and power and things like that. He's more of a pocket player. Get him in and around the box and let him be creative and let him find players. But to get the most out of a Erling Haaland, which is kind of crazy that when you think about it, when you say Haaland's probably not even playing at his peak level. And you've heard Jimmy Carragher talk about this before, where maybe they get Haaland would be even more of a goal scorer if he played in a different system where they're more direct and they sort of feed balls in behind. But it's no secret or it's not rocket science to say that when Holland's got a Foden and he's got a Cherky behind him that can sort of pop up in those pockets, bring the attention to him, allow him to sort of get to use an NFL term, single coverage or to be man marked. You're getting the best play that we've seen out of Holland in a Manchester City shirt, and he's on pace to I don't even know what his goal scoring pace is, but last year Erling Haaland had a bad goal return by his standards, and he still bagged 23, 24 goals. So very, very scary. The City team, they're trending up. They're getting healthy. They've got a very favorable run of fixtures coming up. I know they've got Newcastle away coming out of the break, which will be tough. And despite Newcastle playing pretty poorly, um, St. James's Park is still a very tough place to go to. They've got physical center backs. They've got physical midfielders. They're going to muck it up. That crowd is going to be very, very up for it. But Man City right now are looking like they are going to be Arsenal's closest challengers. Um, got us sitting in third. It's been a it's been a crazy season for us, right? We've got 6 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses. Goals scored, we are what, second in the table in terms of goals scored. We've given up 11, which isn't the best, but it also that puts us what, one, two, three. That puts us fourth, right? So second for goals scored, fourth for goals conceded. You see the form, right? 4 wins out of 5, which sort of puts into perspective all this bullshit that you hear about Maresca out and things like that. And yes, some of the substitutions at times were a little janky. Some of the performances haven't been full 90-minute performances. But look, we're dealing with a lot of injuries, and I'm not making excuses here. I'm just relaying the facts. We're dealing with a lot of injuries. We're dealing with introducing some new players. We've got some we've got much more difficult fixtures when you throw in the Champions League midweek, right? We saw the away trip to Karabag and how difficult that was. Um, Overall, I'm overall generally happy with where Chelsea are right now. I think that given all of those factors that I cited before, we haven't even tapped the potential and the level that this particular team can reach when we're fully fit, when we're firing, when our players have a good understanding. Because look, that's one thing too when it comes to injuries is you always hear managers talk about, or pundits or fans and pundits talk about, the manager doesn't know his best 11 yet, and that's a problem and things like that, right? We hear that drum, and that bat sort of being beat over the head of Liverpool and Orange Slot. There's mitigating factors to why he doesn't know his best 11 yet. And not to be honest with you, top teams always have and should always have a crew of, or a staple of 14 to 15 players that are competing for starting 11 spots, right? We know we have nailed on starters in certain positions, right? We know Caicedo's a nailed on starter. We know Enzo's probably a nailed on starter. Kukurea at left back, Reece James at right back when fit, Sanchez in goal, and things like that. I'm not debating any of that. But if you're looking at the wing positions, you're looking at folks that we'll probably look to play players that are in form and things like that. Even the striker situation, João Pedro, Delap, Mark Guéhi, that's sometimes you go with the hot hand and things like that, and once everybody is back up to full fitness, which I don't believe the lap is back up to full fitness, but there's a lot to be happy about, right? The last 2 defensive performances have been outstanding. And look, you could say it's Wolves, 20th place Wolves, and you can say it's a Spurs side who at home are absolutely dreadful. But we still went out there and didn't concede hardly any chances on goal, didn't concede any goals at all. So, one of the things that really got lost in the sauce last year towards the end was it was our defense that carried us to that top 4 finish. It wasn't Cole Palmer. It wasn't the attack at all. The attack wasn't firing at all at the end of last year. It was the defensive solidity that Maresca instilled into this side. It was folks like Caicedo playing out of their skin. It was the fullbacks who got healthy towards the end of last year, in terms of Reece James. It was the defense that really saw us push for that Champions League spot and really get us over the line when our attack was swelling. So look, long story short, there's still levels to reach. I do believe as much as there are levels to reach, there's still a cap on this team based off of the talent, based off of the center backs, right? We know what's going to happen with the center backs. You're going to get good games from them, and you're going to get terrible games from them. It is what it is. At that point, it's going to really be dependent upon our attack to sort of carry us through. And look, the attack it's been up and down. We've created, but the one thing that's constant is we've been creating chances, right? Had Jao Felix, I mean not Jao Felix, had Jao Pedro finished some of those chances versus Spurs, that would have been 4-5-0. Couple of chances that we spurned in that first half versus Wolves and things like that. Um, the understanding, right? The partnership, the wing partnership, which looks to be Neto on the right now, and then Garnacho on the left, who, look, for all intents and purposes, I've made my opinion very widely known when it comes to Garnacho. um, Not a huge fan of Garnacho, but credit where credit is due, and he played very well last game. We're gonna need him to keep that up, especially with this run of fixtures that we have coming up. He's gonna get a shot versus Barcelona because Barcelona is gonna play a high line, and you're gonna want pace in between. He's gonna get a shot probably versus Arsenal because Arsenal is not going to sit back in a low block and let us dominate unless dominate possession unless they go a goal up and things like that. But there's levels for our wingers to get to reach. There's improvement there. There's improvement by João Pedro. There's improvement by Enzo, who was fantastic versus Wolves. There's Cole Palmer coming back and sort of getting back into the mix, right? 21 goals scored, second most in the league, with our best attacking player not available for the majority of the season. It says a lot. It says a lot. We're going to need Esteval to sort of get some more minutes and for him to keep producing moments and to sort of be that spark. I don't mind Esteval off the bench as an impact sub. I like Neto's work rate. I think that's one thing that Maresca rightly called out with Esteval, especially speaking on that Karabakh game, where he got the early goal and then to me wasn't there mentally when it comes to the defensive side. And with that's all. It's not about ability because I've seen Esteval track down. I've seen him get physical before. That was all about wants and desire. And you've got to be able to in this league. You can't allow your fullbacks to be on an island defensively. There's too many teams that have decent and pretty good wingers when it comes to attacking third and how they approach games that you want to help them out. You want to help Reese out. You want to help Kukurea out when necessary. And look, that's not saying that those guys can't hold their own on an island, but you're going to want to you're going to want to track back and to work hard for the team because that's what's required at this league. And this league has become a very very physical league and a very demanding league. But four, look, we'll just lump up four through. We'll cut it off at 10, right? We'll lump up 4 through 10 in one segment. And there's some teams that are severely underperforming in there, the likes of Liverpool. And then there's some teams that are massively overperforming when it comes to Sunderland. Look, we talked about Liverpool and we beat them, to death. Rightfully so, with the money spent, with the performances that they put out. I talked about them early in the season about what they're doing isn't sustainable, that they have really big issues when it comes to their setup, when it comes to their chemistry, and their understanding. It seems like it for me, I see a lot of people, with the increasing trend of slot out and things like that. For me, yes, Slot is the manager. It's up to him to get it right. But the players have to also carry their weight. I look at key contributors from last year's team that have been last year's title winning team that have been absolutely putrid this year. Mo Salah, Kanate, Van Dijk at times. Kirkez was in the team of the season last year, unjustifiably so, in my opinion, should have been Kukurea, but he looks completely lost. Connor Bradley, not I won't say he's not Liverpool quality, but he's not Liverpool or title winning starting right back quality. Very good young potential player. Very good at times, like he was excellent versus Vinny in the Champions League, but then got chefed up, mashed up by Doku the following weekend. But their setup looks all out of sorts, and some of it is, yes, it's hard to fit in a lot of big money signings. I've seen it happen before with Chelsea in the past. I've seen it happen with Real Madrid when they go on a Galactico spree. It's about Slot has to find his system and he has to get the players to buy into his new way of thinking and his new preferred method of play. Because last year, let's be real, there were just minor tweaks to what was already a very, very good Liverpool side. But it was just a matter of not rocking the boat too much. But this year, it looks like he wants to actually implement his own style, and it looks like the players haven't taken to it. I will never say on another team's like performance and their effort levels that they're not playing for the manager and things like that. I don't know too much because I don't follow Liverpool day in day out like I follow my beloved Chelsea. But when things worked last year a particular way, and that's what they're used to, trying to implement something different and asking new things of the players. And I always believe that a manager should ask new things of the players because you don't want players to get into their comfort zones. But there's a fine line between getting them out of that comfort zone and asking too much. And I think what Sly is asking of his players is a little bit too much. So I could see some and hear some of the shouts for yes, they're down tools on the manager and things like that, and they're not, giving maximum effort. But I also think it's up to the players, right? They get paid handsomely to go out there and give effort, to go out there and to give their best, and they still have enough quality and still enough talent to be in this title race, and the challenge for Europe as well, multiple competitions. But they're out of sorts. And look, last year I think they lost 4 matches in the Premier League. They've already lost what 5 this year. Um, the thing with them is you can't afford to lose too many more matches. I would say the most they can lose and still be in a title race is probably two. And look, you're looking at it, that's 30 or that's 27 matches left. They've got to go on a serious run, and they've got the fixture list to go on a very very good run. Right, we'll look at their upcoming schedule um, right now. Right, so they've got out of the break, they've got Forest at home, PSV at home, West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Leeds away, Inter, Brighton before Spurs. Right, so you would say this week right here where you've got Inter, Brighton, and Spurs is probably their toughest their toughest run of fixtures within the next like 10 games, right? Because after that, look, you got Liverpool, I mean, you got Leeds and then Fulham before you've got the big one again with Arsenal that'll probably decide whether or not Liverpool is really, really in the title conversation. So, look, it's they got to get things, they got to figure things out very quickly, but it's not unthinkable for them to be in the discussion um, over the next 2 months or so, given that run of form, given who Arsenal have coming out of it. I think Man City's also got a pretty favorable run, but Liverpool's got a lot to work on and a lot to fix very, very fast. But look, Sunderland, they were good money for their 2-2 draw versus Arsenal. Very physical side. We saw what they did to us. You could say maybe Arsenal was unlucky, Zubimendi hitting the post, Eze I think hitting the post as well. But credit to them. Do I think it's sustainable? Not really. I know they've got a lot of guys of African descent that will be gone at AFCON. They did go out, and one thing we're not going to do here on this channel and not going to do right now is act like Sunderland is some small club, right? Sunderland's a very, very well followed and well represented club up there in the Northeast, and they spent a good amount of money this summer. They went out and they brought in a lot of players, and a lot of these players I hadn't heard of, but they've also went out there and they took a gamble on Brian Brobby, got the winner against Chelsea, got the equalizer against Arsenal. They've got a very they've got a lot of very very talented players, and they've done a really really good job of implementing their style, their physical style. They're going to muck it up. They're going to do long throws and things like that. But yeah, they've impressed me so far, and I'll be honest with you, I cannot wait until that Tyneside derby. It is going to be absolutely rocking, and especially if Newcastle stay down there in 14th position, because that will only egg on the Black Cats and Sunderland till I die and all that stuff. But yeah, excited about that one. Tottenham, look, Tottenham is a very interesting case, right? Very very interesting case, right? On the balance of performances, they have been shocking at times, especially at home. On the balance of results, 18 points plus 9 goal difference, beat the likes of Man City away. Results wise, they are very, very, coming from 17th to 5th. I think results wise, they're very, very good. But when you strip away those results and you look at the actual performances, yeah, it's been very, very stinky. 2-2. I won't say it flattered them because they were the better team, I thought, versus Man United, and they should have got that 3 points. They should have closed it out. But given the injuries that they've had, right? No Madison, no Kulusevski, no Solanke. Given who they started, their front three on the weekend, Brennan Johnson, Kolo Muani, who broke his jaw on that one and kept playing for about 30 minutes. And then on the left side was I can't even remember who it was, but they ended up bringing on Odebear. They ended up bringing on Till. Um, to me, I think Thomas Frank's done a good job. Yes, he could be better. He could be a little bit more adventurous with his midfield selection. But at the same time, given the injuries that he's had to work with, given the fact that he probably has no idea who his best 11 is because they're not all fit, and to be honest with you, he won't have Madison this year. Not sure when Kulusevski comes back. I think maybe December, January timeframe. Um, they've got a lot of room for improvement. So if I was a Spurs fan, I wouldn't be on Thomas Frank's case. I think he could do better, but I think he's an excellent coach, and for them to be fifth on 18 points at this point in the season, very very well. On the flip side, Man United, I think when I think of Man United this year, I'm very conflicted, right? Because on one hand, I'm like, look, they're 18 points, results wise, same sort of record, 5-3-3 as Spurs. I look at it and I'm like, are they a better side than last year? Yes, absolutely. But has a lot really changed, right? You see that goes for 19. So they're scoring goals this year, but you see that goals against 18. To me, that is a huge, huge cause for concern because you've got a team and a manager that pretty much will play 6 to 7 defensively minded players, right? You've got 3 center backs, you've got 2 fullbacks. Sometimes one of the fullbacks will be Ahmad, who's not super defensive minded, but when you're a wing back, you have to track back, you have to defend because you have to defend those wide areas. Then you've got a and sometimes you've got an Ugarte in there. So to have that many defensive minded players, you and to still concede the amount of goals that they conceded and shots, that's not good. And that's even with them conceding less over the last 3-4 games with Le Mans and goal, who's obviously an improvement over Anana, obviously an improvement over Bayern Deer. They've still got a lot of defensive issues to sort of work out. Attack wise, even with the goals that they've scored, I'm looking at them and I'm like, Cunha hasn't hit the ground running. Sesko definitely hasn't hit the ground running, and then had to limp off with it with a knee injury. But I've heard or read that it's not super serious. And then and Buemo, who's been their standout attacker. But even after that, you've got Mason Mount, who's not really too much of an attacking threat. Xerxes doesn't really get any minutes, and then Ahmad, who probably spends 75% of his time in the right wingback position. But and then Bruno, who's playing deep, who's not giving you the same GNA because he's playing out of position, which could be some of what's attributed to their defensive frailties. But I look at Man United and I'm like, they could beat anybody, and they can also lose to anybody. But I don't think that they are a challenger to that top four, just because I don't believe in the manager and I don't believe that they have the setup to consistently dominate teams. I think they leave their midfield a little bit too wide open. I don't think they have the legs in midfield to cover the gaps that the systems leaves open. But for them to be on 18 points and to have all those issues is a pretty decent return. So um, that's Man United in a nutshell. Bournemouth, Palace have sort of dropped off a little bit. Palace just can't get out of this drawing. They just seem to draw way too many games. But yeah, let's look at the. We'll scroll down a little bit. I know we talked a lot about the top teams, but let's talk about this bottom half of the table. And look, this is probably one of the only times that I've seen over the last 5-6 years where every team in that relegation scrap or relegation positions right now are all teams that have been in the Premier League for 4 or 5 years plus. I can't remember exactly when Forest jumped up, but I feel like I feel like this is their 4th year in a row. West Ham's been around, been in the top flight probably about 10 years now. And then Wolves, I think 7 years, 7 or 8 years. So some Premier League mainstays are really, really struggling, especially Wolves. I saw them, firsthand on the weekend. Second time seeing them versus Chelsea. Both times, I thought they were extremely poor. They set pieced it up versus us in the Carabao Cup, which sort of got them back into it, but they didn't lay a glove on us. They didn't look like they wanted to throw any punches. They're really struggling. Forest, look, we know all the drama with Marinakis, with the firing of some of his of Nuno and the manager before, and then Big Ange. They've got the talent. They did win this weekend versus Leeds, which is like a massive 6 pointer for them. I do think they have too much talent for them to be in that relegation fight all year. I do think that they'll step it up. But you can see that goal difference -10, tied for joint worst in the league with Leeds and West Ham. Um, they're struggling, but I think they'll have enough quality to get out of it. West Ham, on the other hand, I do think that they have the quality. And look, they've won, I think, two in a row under Nuno, which is kind of crazy that it took Nuno like 6 months less to win two in a row than it took Amarin. But they've got some match winners in there. They've got some good talent, right? The likes of Bowen, the likes of Paqueta. Um, but for them, it's just a matter of buying into the system, buying into of giving a little bit more effort. I look at them and I'm like, they're not a super, super talented team, but they're more talented than Burnley. They're more talented than Leeds. They're probably just as talented as the likes of a Brentford. Um, but the instability at manager, the drama around the club, the supporters seem to be infighting. Maybe the lack of a true home field or home ground advantage plays into it. But yeah, they're struggling right now. But like I said, they've won two in a row, so maybe they kick on. But apart from those two, looking at Newcastle, and they're like, Eddie Howe's got to do better. Eddie Howe has to do better. Um, I actually thought when it all shook out that Newcastle's transfer window wasn't as bad as what people thought it was. I like Voltamade. Elanga, ugh, he's definitely hasn't hit the ground running there at St. James's Park. Um, Jacob Murphy either. But I like Tiao in the defense. I think he's very physical. I think he's a very, very good athlete, which at times, I thought that they were sort of lacking with Dan Burn and Sven Botman. But they just seem to not be able to close games out. They seem to lose a lot of the really really close games and take away vital points. Look, I look at that talent and I look at that team, their front three, and I'm like, yeah, they should be in and around the top five. Right on the Champions League. What, two out of the last 3 years qualification, but they've got to they got to get it together, and they've got to get it together fast because Eddie Howe's been there for a while. We know, look, some of the drama with Isak probably curtailed what should have been a decent start to the season and probably created a lot of unnecessary drama and headlines and things like that. But he's gone. And the guy that they brought in to replace him, very good player. Voltamade is a very, very good player, very good technically, good height, good link up play. Not the most pacey when it comes to counterattacks and things like that, but they got Barnes for that. They got Gordon for that. They've got Elanga for that. But he can keep up. But yeah, they got to figure it out fast because it's looking very, very spooky for them. But um yeah, it's shaping up to be a very, very interesting season. The race for top five, the race for Europe is going to be it's going to be crazy. I don't think this year we're going to see team Arsenal get, or any team get 92, 93 points. I think that with the injuries, with the amount of fixtures being played, it's going to take about 85, 86, 87 points to win this thing. Um, and I really, if I'm looking at it and being honest, I only see two teams, and maybe Arsenal City, maybe Liverpool, being able to pull off winning streaks because they've proven it over the past 3, 4 years to sort of get in and around that. Chelsea, I just don't think we'll be able to go on 6, 7 match winning streaks in the Premier League because of our youth, because of our inexperience, because of our question marks at the center back position, and even at the keeper position. Even though Sanchez has been pretty decent, knock on wood, so far this year. But yeah, let me know. Let me know what you guys think. This was a little bit of a longer one, but when you get talking about the Premier League in its entirety, things can get a little long winded. But let me know what you all think, how you all think the season's going to play out, who have been your surprises so far this year, who in terms of team performance, who have been your duds, and we will, yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and as always, appreciate everybody for locking in. Peace.